July 16, 1054. In the dim light of Hagia Sophia, a document is placed before Patriarch Michael of Constantinople, who is preparing for a liturgy. The man who does this is Cardinal Humbert. He represents the Catholic Church. The document declares that Patriarch Michael has been excommunicated by the Bishop of Rome, the Pope. Humbert leaves the document, then silently departs from Hagia Sophia and Constantinople. That same day, Patriarch Michael convenes a church council and excommunicates those who excommunicated him. Historians call this the Great Schism, the East-West Schism. But this division did not happen overnight. Its roots stretch back hundreds of years. Throughout the Middle Ages, the most fundamental dispute between the two churches was this: who holds universal supremacy? The popes in Rome argued that supremacy belonged to the Western Church. Because Peter, the apostle of Jesus, had come to Rome, established a church there, and was martyred there. According to the papacy, Peter was the first bishop of Rome. His successors sat on the papal throne as his representatives. Moreover, Paul, who worked tirelessly to spread Christianity, also came to Rome and was martyred there. The West claimed that the bones of both lay beneath a church in the Vatican. Thus, the Roman Church stood atop the two greatest martyrs of Christianity. The Eastern Church, on the other hand, used a far more worldly logic. Wherever the emperor resides, that city's church must be supreme. Constantinople was the capital of the empire. In pre-Christian Roman religion, emperors were already the heads of religious authority. This tradition continued after the capital moved to Constantinople in the 4th century. Emperors like Constantine, Theodosius, and Justinian held authority over religious matters. For the East, the matter was simple. The church in the emperor's city must be superior to all others. It seems the rivalry was more political than religious, but cultural differences also entered the picture. In the East, clergy could grow beards and marry. In the West, both were forbidden. The Western Church was more dogmatic. The Pope's word was absolute, unquestionable. In the East, patriarchs were seen as human beings, capable of making mistakes. But the greatest problem of all was language. When the Roman Empire split in 395, the resulting borders were not only political, they were cultural. Latin dominated the West, Greek dominated the East. Because of this language barrier, the two sides remained unaware of each other's theological debates for years. A letter sent from Constantinople to Rome in the 5th century went unanswered for months because no translator could be found. Eastern clergy regarded Latin as the language of barbarians and deemed it unworthy of translation. By the 9th century, some Eastern clerics were saying openly, "The Pope speaks the language of barbarians. He can never establish authority over Constantinople." Another massive point of contention was the Trinity, the formula of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Council of Constantinople in 381 decreed that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father, that is, from God alone. But in 589, the Western Church changed this at the Council of Toledo, adding 3 words, "and from the Son." For the West, this was a safeguard against heresy. For the East, it was a violation of the very foundation of faith. Historians call this the Filioque controversy. Filioque, Latin for "and from the Son," 3 words. In a single sentence, shattered 2 worlds. In the early centuries of Christianity, there was no strict hierarchy among the churches. Over time, 5 churches rose to prominence: Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. Eastern clergy called this system the Pentarchy. the fivefold government. In the early years, the Bishop of Rome held a primacy of honor. But as emperors sought to elevate Constantinople, they began pulling the other patriarchs to their side, deepening the east-west divide. For a time, popes had to bow to the political power of emperors. An emperor's support was even needed to become pope. In 726, Eastern Roman Emperor Leo III forbade the veneration of images and icons of Jesus and the saints. This was Iconoclasm. Pope Gregory III fiercely opposed it. His letter of excommunication never reached Constantinople. His messengers were arrested along the way. In 751, when the Lombards threatened northern Italy, the Pope asked for help from the Frankish king Pepin the Short. Pepin accepted, defeated the Lombards, and donated the territories from Rome to Ravenna to the papacy. Now the Pope was not only a spiritual leader, he was the ruler of a state. This was a turning point in Christian history. In 800, Pepin's son Charlemagne was crowned emperor by the Pope. At that time, a woman sat on the Eastern Roman throne, Empress Irene. The understanding of the time held that an emperor must be male, so the West had crowned its own. When Irene was deposed in 802, neither the Pope nor the Franks abandoned their claim to the imperial title. The divide grew deeper still. The final breaking point came with the Norman conquest of southern Italy. The Normans, who took control in the 11th century, were loyal to the Catholic Church, but the churches there still conducted liturgies according to Eastern rules. In 1053, the Pope issued a decree. These churches would adopt the Latin Rite or be closed. The East was outraged. Patriarch Michael announced the closure of all Latin churches in Constantinople. A theological disagreement had become a diplomatic crisis. To find a resolution, the Pope sent a delegation led by Cardinal Humbert to Constantinople in June of 1054. The talks went badly from the very start. Humbert handed the Patriarch a letter, not diplomatic, not respectful, but condescending, advising him to submit to papal authority. Michael was deeply offended. He refused to receive the delegation for weeks. Humbert waited and waited. Finally, overcome with anger, he walked into Hagia Sophia on the morning of July 16th. He placed the excommunication document on the altar and walked out. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. With the emperor's support, Patriarch Michael excommunicated Cardinal Humbert first, then the entire delegation, and so the Eastern and Western churches officially broke apart. At first, ordinary people were not much affected. Western and Eastern Christians continued to live together peacefully in the same regions, but over time, the tension between the churches spread to the people. The Crusades made everything worse, and in 1204, the Crusaders captured Constantinople. During 3 days of looting, churches were turned into stables. Sacred relics in Hagia Sophia were stolen. Orthodox brothers were declared heretics and slaughtered. From that day on, it was no longer a theological difference. It was a blood feud, one that would take centuries to heal. For centuries, attempts at reconciliation were made, councils were convened, talks were held, the outcome never changed. Even today, the wound between the Catholic and Orthodox churches has not fully healed. Because what lay beneath was not just a difference in faith, it was language barriers, political ambition, centuries of othering, and a mistrust that ran deeper than any doctrine. July 16th, 1054. One document, 2 excommunications, and Christianity's greatest wound, never fully healed.